not streaming. We're gonna play some Fortnite keyboard and mouse. These are my that video is so funny.
Oh yeah, I got an Insta chat this time. I felt so good about it. 2 people. Amy always just says hi at the very start and says nothing for the rest of the story.
Okay.
Welcome to the How to Piece Control map. This map will use audio like you're hearing right now and video demonstrations to teach you how to piece control. A quick rundown of the map for you. As you can see at the front of the hub, you can shoot these blocks to get around the map. Now this is very important. Use that signal remote in your inventory to get back here at any point in time. That way you can head into different drills. Throughout the map, you'll find various cubes that you can shoot for voiceovers to This is where absolute beginners should start. If you shoot any of the cubes around you, you can head on into the tutorial rooms, where you'll find more cubes that you can shoot to listen to audio, which will teach you some stuff about piece control. In some of these, there's even video tutorials on the wall to help you along. But yeah, if you're brand new to the game, head on into lesson number 1. First step to learning how to piece control is understanding what it is. If you look at the bot right in front of you here, you'll see that half of the builds are yours and half of them are the enemy's. The goal throughout a fight is to try to get as many builds around the enemy as possible, because the more builds you have, the more peaks you can set up. If they owned all the builds, then they're nice and safe in their structure, but if you even own one wall, you may have an opportunity to make an edit and take a shot on the enemy. Practice taking some shots on this first sentry here. When you own all the builds around an enemy, this is the best scenario for you. You have them full boxed or full pieced. When you have all the piece on the enemy, they have no escape. All you gotta do now is set up a nice peek shot, which we'll go into more later. If you're ever in a team game mode and you have all the builds around the enemy, a lot of times you wanna wait for your teammate to get there. Tell your teammate you have them full boxed, and when your teammate gets there, you jump in together and you can get a free kill.
Oh my gosh, that was... So I can see him here and you can see me. That's like an insanely good peak.
Now, just like in the first representation, in this scenario, you have partial peace on the enemy. What this means is you own a few builds and not all of them. Sometimes in this situation, you'll be able to take a shot before they get away. Other times, they'll escape out of the builds that they own. Now, whenever you have partial peace like this, you can do a thing called pre-boxing. Head over to the next reel to find out what that is.
Now I learned pre-boxing.
Walk around this box real quick. Notice how you own all the builds except for one wall. If the enemy owns just that one wall, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to try to escape out that direction. This is an opportunity for you to pre-box the enemy. If you know that they're going to escape out a certain direction, or even if you just think they're going to run out that way, you can make a box in that direction and they'll walk into your builds. And doing that is called a pre-box.
Bang! That's a clip right there.
It's important to note that cones are one of the most useful builds in the game. You may be wondering why. Cones can place farther than any other build. Try to stand as far away from this sentry as possible and hold out your cone bind. Look at how far that bad boy places. You can place a cone from almost an entire box away. But not only that, place a wall in front of this sentry here. If you look over the wall, the cone will place over the sentry a box away. So when you're in a fight, it's super important to try to look for opportunities to use cones to trap the enemy. Whether it be getting them stuck on a ramp when you get them coned, or placing it over walls just like I just showed you. Use cones more and you'll end up outplaying your opponent way more often. Another important thing to know is that you can place walls pretty far from yourself as well. Try standing still a layer below the sentry here and hold out your walls. Then look straight up. Notice how you can place a wall in front of the sentry. That is basically called a high wall. You can use high walls in so many different situations: to block shots from people above you, to get a wall on an enemy above you, just like you just did to this sentry. By getting that wall, you can edit it and set up a peek and get the kill. There's lots of ways to use high walls, which you'll learn throughout this map, but that's just the basics of it. Now it's time to understand right-hand peaks, which is one of the most important things to get down. Position yourself to the left of the window here. Try to make it so that the sentry can't see you. If you quickly walk to the right, take a shot, and then reset the wall. That is an example of a right-hand peak. In the next section of tutorials, we're going to be completely focusing on peaks.
What?
They look at you if they see you.
The first peak we're going over is one of the most common. It's called a peanut butter peak. Why, you might be wondering? Probably because a peanut butter sandwich is best when it's cut in diagonals. To do this peak, you want to make the triangle, but when you confirm that triangle edit, make sure you're off to the left. If you're not far enough off to the left, the enemy's going to have an angle on you and they're going to shoot you. Once you make the edit, you want to jump upwards and to the left while taking the shot. And as soon as you shoot, reset your wall. For all the peaks we're going to be going over, always try to reset your wall after taking your shot. That way, if your shot doesn't kill the enemy, they won't be able to do counter damage because you will have reset that wall. And the other thing you need to know throughout these drills is try to have a cone in your box for the most part. If you don't have a cone in your box and you edit a peak, the enemy could place a ramp over you. And a lot of times, that's going to mess up your chance of ending the fight. The second peak is a window peak. And now there's something you need to know. Try editing a window on the far right, and then make a far left, and then make one in the middle. Notice how the middle window peak is a lot bigger than the other two. This means you need to be careful whenever you do a middle window peak. Simply because if you're not far enough off to the left, the enemy's gonna have an angle on you and they're gonna shoot. So practice some different window peaks here, and when you feel comfortable, move on to the next one. This peak is called a low wall. The way you do this peak is you crouch underneath the wall and then go up to take the peak. Try placing a cone underneath you while doing this peak, because typically when you're in a fight, you're gonna wanna have a cone in your box, otherwise the enemy might be able to put a ramp over you. So practice setting up this peak and all the rest of them with cones in your box. That way you can get some variety practice. What about when you have piece control above the enemy? This is the type of edit you want to do. Edit the right tiles of your floor and cones and stand off to the left. A lot of times in this situation, the enemy is going to try to jump up in the place that you edit to take a shot on you. So be ready to place a wall just in case they go for that jump shot on you. But for now, practice editing those right tiles, and when you step into your peak, reset the floor. That way the enemy couldn't take a shot on you. The final peak we're going to go over is when the enemy is above you. The peak I have set up here is a bit complicated. You want to be on a ramp, have a floor above you, edit the back tile of the floor, and place another ramp above you. And then you can jump through the tile while you take a shot. It's one of the most protected peaks in the game. It's called the Martaz peak. There are, of course, other ways to set up peaks from below. For example, you can try ramping up towards the enemy, placing a wall, and edit a window in the wall, and then it's just like a normal window peak. You can do the same thing with a peanut butter peak, a low wall. Practice doing a variety of things, and then you've completed your peak training and you're off to the next task, which is piece control behind peaks.
Wait a minute. Get it higher a little bit.
Welcome to the third room, and this is probably going to be the most complicated one. This is the room where we finally start to piece control the enemies. But you get the insider scoop. I'm going to teach you some pro techniques to do it the best way possible. I have all the same peek scenarios set up as the previous room. Let's start with the triangle edit here. What I want you to do is position yourself so that the sentry cannot see you, just like we did for the peeks. The goal is to not get shot while piece controlling the enemy. So while you're behind this peak, try to place a cone in their box, walls around them, and a cone on top. You're probably already noticing that that left wall is hard to get without exposing yourself. Typically, when I'm piece controlling from behind a peak, I leave that wall open. But while doing it from behind a triangle edit, if you look upwards and to the left, you can still get that wall. Only if you look in the perfect spot. But practice piece controlling this first target from behind this peak on repeat and set up good peek shots and reset your wall after your shots. This is going to be the hardest part of getting this down, but I'm telling you, it's going to pay off. Once you're ready, you can move on to the windows. For a window peek, it works exactly the same. You just have to stand off to the left of your window, and then you can place the cone above and below, and the back wall and the right wall. The left wall is going to be impossible to place without exposing yourself here, but it's okay. The way I approach it is if I see the enemy going out the left, I'll try to build an entire box out the left side before they get there. Or if you see them going to the left, you could just step into the window a little bit more and place that left wall. But for now, just leave that left wall open and focus on getting all the builds from behind the peak and setting up a good peek shot. And of course, reset your wall after every shot you take. Now, while you're on this drill, I got one more tip for you. Try placing a ramp in their box instead of a cone. If you get the sentry underneath the ramp, then you can get all the walls around him. You don't need to worry about being behind the peak until you edit the ramp. Once you want to take that shot, you just set up the edit on the ramp, get behind your window peak, and take the peek shot. Give it a try and then move on to the next when you're ready. The first two options are the best way to piece control from behind a right-hand peak. If you did it behind a low wall, oftentimes your head is going to be visible while trying to place the builds. So I would scratch that off your list of practicing right now. But what I do want you to do to this bot right here is set up a normal wall with a window in it. Stand in the window and then have your cone out. Look in the dead center of your screen with the cone build out, and then gently move your crosshair up and down. Notice how you don't have to move it very much for the cone to place above you versus below you. So if you keep your crosshair somewhat pointed in the center of the screen when placing the builds, it'll help speed up the process of placing the top and bottom cone. Just a little tip for you. Just like in the first two drills, by standing to the left of the peak here, you can place the right walls and a cone or ramp in the enemy's box. After getting the builds in the enemy's box, just step into the peak and reset the floor afterwards. In the final drill here, I have the Martaz peak set up like we talked about in the peak section. What you can try doing is after taking the peak shot through the Martaz peak, place a wall. Notice how you can look straight up through the peak and place walls a layer up. A lot of times you can catch your opponents in that piece control. The other thing you can practice doing here is ramping up towards the enemy, placing a wall, and doing the different forms of piece control we practiced earlier, like through a window or through a peanut butter edit. And like always, set up a nice peak and reset your wall after taking your shot.
Oh my gosh, that was actually so good.
In this room, I'm going to try to explain to you when it's okay to actually jump into an opponent's box rather than setting up a peek. There's a few scenarios where this is okay to do, starting with this first one here. Notice how I gave you a little teammate here. If you and your teammate are ever fighting a solo, that is the first scenario where it's okay to get in, as long as if you guys are coordinated with it. You don't want to jump in alone unless you're 100% sure your teammate is right there on his other wall. Until you're 100% sure your teammate is there, just try to get good peek shots on the enemy, because you don't want to be the person that dies first and sells your teammates bread.
Three, two, one. Bang.
The second scenario where it's sometimes okay to jump in is if you're 200 HP and your opponent has 1 HP. Jumping in can help you end that fight immediately and prevent them from getting heals off, which is why it's okay. But if you ever have the opportunity to set up a peek rather than jumping in, do it. Because if you jump in and you get hit for 150 damage, and a third party, a third person is rolling up to the fight, all of a sudden you're at the disadvantage and you're probably dead. Which is why it's usually better to set up a peek, but sometimes you need to jump in to end the fight. The Third scenario, and this one is important. If the opponent just shot their pump shotgun, they're going to have a delay until they can shoot again. So if they ever shoot their pump, you can open a wide edit and shoot them before their pump recharges. A lot of times in pro fights, one of the biggest keys to winning the fight is that exact thing right there. They time their edits to be right after the enemy shoots. This takes a lot of practice and a lot of fighting experience, but it's a good thing to know.
I hit him full in the head.
And the final situation is all about timing it so that the enemy is distracted. For example, let's say the enemy is boxed up, spraying at a different player. You could pickaxe in the back of their box when they're not looking and maybe get a surprise attack. Or if you just piece control them so fast that they don't even have time to react, a lot of times you can get shots off before they can even realize you're there. Once again, this is something that you'll learn over time, but it's important to know. You made it to the final room, and this room is all about a thing called counter piece control. This isn't something you can necessarily practice, but it's important to know. Let's pretend in this first scenario, you walked up against the enemy's wall, and they built around you super fast. Knowing that they were about to do this, you decided to build a wall to your left. That way, you had an escape. That is called counter piece control. Building around you so that the enemy can't. If you ever predict that you're about to get piece controlled, try to claim one wall to your side. That way you can make a quick escape. A lot of people will try to just simply run out that side without placing the wall, and that's how you end up walking into an opponent's build and getting clipped. Try to build the wall first and then edit out, and it might save your life. The second scenario here is one of my favorites. A lot of times I'll walk up against an opponent's wall, knowing that they're going to try to edit on me, maybe try to piece control me or take a shot. So I place a cone underneath me and a wall to my left. By doing this, I can flip up the cone, edit the sidewall. Now what I want you to do is stand to the left of the wood builds and reset the cone. Notice how you can use this wall as a right-hand peek. So by doing this set of moves, you gained a right-hand peek on an opponent who thought they had the advantage on you. So next time you walk up to an opponent's wall and you think they're about to box you, place a cone in the left wall, flip the cone up, edit out the side, and then reset the cone, and boom, you have a right-hand peek on them.
Okay guys, so we just completed all of the beginner tutorial. I think it was really helpful. Now, instead of doing beginner drills, we'll do that tomorrow, or next time we get on. I'm gonna get into my first ranked game of the day, and probably an only game. Win this game, let's go. I'm definitely getting gold today, bro. If I don't get gold today, I'm gonna crash out. Teach me, nigga, teach me. Oh my, he built. Where do we land? Well, I've memorized cone. I think I should make floor V though. Yes, I'm just gonna stop sprinting for the moment here. real, so I don't really want to fight him, but also... Okay, right now, can you explain why my crosshair was aiming directly at him and it wasn't hitting him? Learned a new trick. I think he was real too. I'm pretty sure he was, like the way he tried to fight me. Just bad. But there's no way he's camping in a bush, bro. I've seen him before. I think in a game yesterday I saw that name. It makes sense though. Yeah, there is. There's gonna be someone camping this PI, but... He's one! He's so low! Wait, how low is he? How low is he? How low is he? Yep. And then... Oh my gosh, bro. Just gonna do one more section of this and then I'm getting off. That was painful, bro. Oh, Marshmallow's back.
In the beginner drill section of the map, it's exactly what it sounds like. Some of the most common piece control situations that every beginner should master. In each of these rooms, there's a block you can shoot to listen to a tutorial for that specific drill. But if you want a visual example of what these look like, you can check out the YouTube video, which is in the back of the... This first drill is open to your imagination. Box this sentry whatever way you see fit, but while doing so, make sure you're placing your builds from behind a right-hand peak. That way, if it was a real enemy, it wouldn't be able to shoot you. And of course, take a nice peek shot and reset your wall afterwards. If nothing I said made sense right there, you may need to go back to the beginner tutorial part of this map. Anytime an enemy is on a ramp, you always want to try to get a cone over top of them. So practice getting the cone over the enemy, placing the close wall, and then editing a window or a triangle edit and placing the back walls. Then set up a nice peak and reset your wall after taking the shot. In this drill, you're going to be practicing piece control from above. Place a floor and cone over the enemy, and then edit the right tiles of your floor and cone. Do this while standing to the left of your floor and cone. This should set up a nice right-hand peak for you, and from behind that peak, you can place the walls around the enemy and set up a nice peak shot. After you take the shot, reset your floor, or place a wall in front of you to block possible shots from the sentry.
Someone on the stream has...
In this drill, you're going to be using the naturally built wall as a right-hand peak. So place a floor and cone over the enemy and stand to the left of the wall. That way the sentry can't see you. From there, you can place a cone in the enemy's box, walls around him, or a ramp in the enemy's box and walls around, and then take a peek shot and reset your floor after shooting. In this drill, you can practice doing a Martaz peak, which we learned in the tutorial section of the map, or you can practice placing a ramp, floor and cone, double edit through the floor and cone, place a wall between you and the sentry, and then set up a peak. To take it one step further, you can practice boxing the enemy from behind a right-hand peak, just like we learned in the tutorial section of the map. And of course, when taking the peek shot, reset the wall after shooting. In this drill, you're going to practice placing a high wall in front of the enemy. So it starts out by ramping up towards the enemy and then swinging walls up in the direction of the sentry. Once you get that wall, just jump onto a ramp and piece control the enemy through the wall. Building high walls is super important, so try to get comfortable with this. And if you're confused on what it should look like, head back to the main hub and look behind you and check out that video on YouTube. It'll show every single drill. This drill, you're going to practice side jumping. Start out by placing a cone through that glass floor, and then jump to the right or left of that cone and place a wall in front of the sentry while you're mid-air and catch yourself on a floor. Once you're at that point, edit a window in the wall and piece control the enemy, take a peek shot, and go again. Practice alternating sides that you go to. You want to be comfortable doing this from every direction. In this drill, do not drop down in front of the sentry. The goal of this drill is to get comfortable placing and editing the wall from an awkward angle. So what I want you to do is make a double edit downwards through a floor and cone, place the wall in front of the sentry, and then a cone in the sentry's box. Do all of this without dropping down. Stay up on that top floor there. After getting comfortable with all these drills, you may be ready for the advanced section of the map. Woo, let's go!
Well, guys, thank you for watching the stream. I will do advanced drills tomorrow. And I'm gonna keep drilling myself on the other stuff. But advanced drills tomorrow. Thank you for watching.